And hello, everybody, or good evening. We are live. It's the West Roasty Ninja here. And as usual, for these top 5 collaborations, we have Dawg Sidious from the Dawg Show hanging out here. And say hi. What's going on, Dawg? What's happening?
Hey, what's going on, Mel? Great to see you here tonight and everybody here in the chat room. So, yep, I'm Dawg Sidious, folks, from the Dawg Show. And, yeah, I'm stoked to do this one tonight, talk about one of my favorite things on the planet, Game of Thrones. And, yeah, we're going to talk about our favorite episodes of all time. And there's been a lot of episodes. I think, what, 67 episodes, I think, maybe?
Yep, 67 episodes. Yep, 6 seasons of 10 episodes each. And then we came down to 7 last season. And evidently, we're going to have 6 for season 8, the final season.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of a weird kind of experience because I really didn't spend as much time with this top 5 like some of the other lists that we've been doing, because it seems like, you know, I kind of picked my top 5 pretty quickly, including the honorable mention. So maybe because they're just so memorable and so good, you know, and then, you know, it was easy to tell the good episodes from the bad episodes in this series. What about you, Dawg? Was it tough?
Yeah.
Was it easy, or was it?
I felt the exact same way you did on this one, but it wasn't as difficult as doing our albums one or like villains. I think we've had some tough ones, you know, with like a lot to choose from. But I was pretty much on that criteria of, you know, that memorable scene. Was there something a little different here about this? What made this episode or you know, make it stand out that made this show, you know, the greatest show that's ever been on television, basically, right? So
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that top 5 albums thing, and basically it started out as top 5 with one honorable mention, and then we went into like the top 5 with 2 honorable mentions, and then we just decided to make it a top 10 with 0 honorable mentions. I mean, so yeah, I mean that album stream was tough because there's so many great albums that we had had to choose from, and want to thank everybody for coming on and watching us tonight in the chat. Hope you guys enjoyed. I mean, we will definitely enjoy going through this list. Game of Thrones is, again, as Dawg said, probably one of the best episodes of all time in TV history. And it's great. And I think I'm going to start with some, basically a little bit of facts and figures about Game of Thrones, because, when you go on the channel, The Westerosi Ninja, you will learn some stuff. So the first thing I'm going to show is basically a chart of showing the U.S. viewers per episode of all, in all the seasons. And it's really interesting how this lays out. Basically, on the x-axis, you have the episode number that goes up to 67, obviously. And on the y-axis, what you have is basically the number of viewers. Okay, this is just U.S. viewers, and it's probably just U.S. viewers when it's shown or aired live. Okay, and what you see here is that season 1, I mean, we only had about maybe a 2.52 million average, and then it starts to ramp up, right? So in season 2, we get to about a 3.8 million average per episode, and then ramps up, quite a bit in season 3 to 4.97 or 5, then really goes up to a bit to almost 7 million viewers per episode in season 4, and then it kind of stays stagnant. Stays kind of like constant or stagnant in season 5, and everybody has a theory about why that's the case. Season 5 is kind of considered to be like the worst kind of season for the Game of Thrones series, and especially you see a really precipitous drop off here in episodes 6, 7, and 8. And that kind of coincides with the meat of the Dorne storyline in season 5. So go figure that, right? But anyway, so after season 5, then it kind of goes back up into season 6 with an average of 7.69 million viewers per episode, and then there's this really huge jump in season 7 where it jumps almost 2 million viewers, or even more than 2.5 million viewers and up into about 10.26 million viewers per episode. So, I mean, it's been a pretty nice little curve in terms of viewership, starting out with season 1. I mean, everybody thinks like, wow, man, Game of Thrones is such a big deal right now. It's such a big phenomenon, but it really was pretty modest in the beginning. I mean, look at season 1, we're looking at 2.52 million viewers. So, very, very interesting stuff here, Dawg. So what do you think about this chart?
Absolutely, and that's what I was looking at too, Milton. You brought that to everybody's attention there about season 5 there, yeah. And I can see that how there's a nice, we're increasing, into season 4. There's a nice peak there for season 5, like on episode 1, because everybody's all stoked to get into season 5. Now I do remember that the first 4 episodes were leaked, so I don't know how that skews our numbers and things of that nature, but I'm just thinking of how the season kind of goes.
Yep.
It just kind of dips, right?
Yeah.
And then by the time we get to season 5, episode 8, we can see that, oh wow, bam, there's a great episode here, and things kind of picked up for us, right?
Yep.
And I think we're not increasing as much, because the way season 5 kind of worked out, going into season 6, but but now we're back on the increases as we're in the end game, if you will,
exactly, yeah.
With season 7 there. And I think we're back on track. I think that's going to really climb for our last. I'm interested in seeing the last numbers.
Yeah, and also, season 7, the jump in viewership between season 6 and 7 in terms of the average, I think is really, really telling in terms of, how Game of Thrones has basically been ingrained in kind of like, the greater societal sense, if you will, and because, it's such a 2.5 million jump. So, I mean, people are talking about this right now. I'm not sure if people are talking about it because it's towards the end, or, or people are just watching it because they're sick of waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish the book, or the people are just viewing Game of Thrones because there's nothing else on TV that's good,
That could be it
competing for
too.
viewership. But I mean, a 2.5 million jump between 6 and 7 is quite large. We're looking at, probably about 25% in
And
viewership.
if I may, I'm kind of thinking back to what happens kind of in season 6, and in between season 5 to season 6, we had is Jon Snow coming back, right?
Yeah.
And that was like one of the biggest TV plot kind of cliffhangers, if you will, kind of looking back on like who shot JR, right, back with Dallas, right? I mean, that's what kind of it reminded me of as far as like the culture impact, as far as the viewership and that. Well, Jon Snow does come back in season 6, and we have a great a great Battle of the Bastards episode, and the show it took off a little bit. It got a little more fuel into it from that, I think, and that I think that's what kind of happened there. If that makes any sense, Mel.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the word is out. People are getting hyped over this stuff, and as you go on further and further into the show. So anyway, I have one more slide here, basically, and these are a couple of pie charts. These are really demographic surveys, if you will. I don't think they're very statistically valid because we're only looking at about 4,380 responses. If you 4,000 out of say an average viewership of 4 million per episode, I mean that's less than 0.1. That's about 0.1%. So that's not very statistically valid, but it's pretty interesting in terms of what it shows here. The pie chart to the upper right left-hand corner is basically age, and about 72% of the viewers are in the 18 to 29-year-old age group. I mean, we're not, Dawg, right? I don't know how old you are, but I'm definitely not.
Definitely not in that age group.
Yeah, I'm not in that age group too, and it really drops significantly. I mean, you only have about 18% in the 30 to 44% age group, and then everybody above 50, above 45. Look at that little teeny green slice over there. I mean, that's tiny. I mean, that's like 2 to 3%. So it's interesting. I mean, basically, so Game of Thrones, according to this pie chart, is definitely a young person's show, which is kind of odd, considering that it's a pretty mature show, right? So,
yeah, it seems. Yeah, that seems a little off to me. Cause what was the green one there, Milt?
The green is the above 45.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yes, and that's like 2 to 3% at the most,
But I've always gone against the grain a little bit, so
yeah. And now in the pie chart to the upper right hand corner, what you see is the gender, right? 81.8% of the responses, are basically male that watch Game of Thrones, whereas about 17% are female. And evidently there's a thin orange slice about, where people are neither male or female in terms of gender. So I guess that's the kind of like the confused segment of society here. And, it's pretty interesting too, because, if you look at our community, there seems to be a lot more women in our community, especially like, people in the chat right now, people in the streams, than men. So, I mean, I find that pretty interesting that it's such a big disparity in gender.
I do too. I would have, I would have guessed 50-50 or, maybe even slightly the other way. I would have thought there might have been more females than males.
Yeah. And then, it's pretty interesting, definitely. Or, I mean, I thought there might have been a bigger segment of females, but, less than 20% of the viewership, that is comprised of females. That sounds awfully low. But again, there's only 4,000 responses. If you take 4 million viewers per average on an episode, that's 0.1%. I mean, that is not a statistically valid sample. But it's interesting, nevertheless, to see this kind of stuff. And basically, the bottom pie chart, what you see here is basically, who reads the book only, who watches the show only, and who actually reads the books and watch the show. And there's this kind of like feeling amongst the community itself that, there's like, there's a lot of exclusivity here, right? People, book readers always bash the show watchers, but in reality, it appears that most people watch the show and read the books as well. So what we have here is, 90.5% basically do both. And, only a thin slice actually reads the books only. And then you have a little bit bigger slice that only watch the show only. So, which is kind of telling. That means, most of the, according to at least this poll, right, that everybody's pretty well read in terms of in books and show lore, if you will.
I would have done like everything that looks like Pac-Man right there. I thought that would have been read.
Yeah.
You'd ask me to, fill this out prior to just on my guesses. I would have thought there would have been a lot more just show watchers.
Yeah, and yeah, so did I because so have I because I think the show is actually the driving force behind the popularity of this series, and it's probably driving up a lot of the book sales too. But then again, the fact that the show is the fact that there is a correlation between the show and rising book sales probably means that people who are watching the show are probably going out there and buying books at the same time.
Just seeing what is that? That's 92.5%, Mil?
It's 90.5%.
Okay, yeah, 90.5%, right? Just seeing 90.5% of folks reading in a statistical thing is pretty outstanding.
Yeah. Again, I don't think it's statistically valid in the sense that I don't think there's enough responses. The sample is kind of low, but I think it's telling in a way. I can't see it deviating too much from this if it was a statistically valid sample. It may go down to maybe 80% that reads both, and the red slice gets a little bit bigger. But I found it interesting when I was looking this stuff up, and then it's like, whoa, this is pretty cool. So anyway, so basically, what?
I said most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So awesome. So I think we're gonna start now with our lists here, guys. So that's enough facts and figures for everybody, and we are gonna start with our honorable mentions first. And as usual, the visiting team gets to talk first. Go ahead, Dawg.
All right. Yep. So, folks, my honorable mention. We're gonna do an honorable mention and then top five, if you will. So, my honorable mention here is Two Swords. This is from season 4, episode 1. So this was directed by Dan Weiss and written by Dan and Dave as well. So I love the opening scene with, it's kind of Tywin Lannister's send off for Ned Stark, if you will, right? It's pretty dark, if you will, right? We're taking pretty much the last remnants of Ned Stark. And we get to see the forging of the 2 new swords, and him throwing the Stark pelt, if you will, into the fire. And then we see his face, and then we lead right into, our entrance music, if you will, right? So there's some great, character interaction in this episode as well, right? We have, Jamie, Jamie, Bronn, and Podrick. Right, waiting for the Prince of Dorne to arrive, and there's some pretty funny banner with Bronn, and then when they arrive and they find out what's going on with Oberyn, but then we have the excellent introduction with Oberyn, and the tension that's building up with the Martells and the Lannisters also, right? So other things that stick out in this episode. Yeah, we have Jamie and Tywin, and Tywin trying to pretty much control Jamie to get him to go to Casterly Rock and rule, but Jamie's not going to leave Cersei, basically, right? And so there's some there's a great scene with them as well. And my favorite, probably one of a lot of other folks' favorites is the Arya and the Hound scenes, of course, right? In the beginning, we see Arya, whinging, if you will, right, about not having a pony and things of that nature, right? And by the time we get into the tavern and have the great the great banter with the Hound, probably his most powerful scene ever. By the time that's all over with, right, Arya levels up. She gets her sword back, and she gets her pony, and the Hound gets his chicken. and we have this beautiful music ending. And it's leading us into this season, which is I think season 4 is probably my favorite season.
Mm-hmm.
But you have the beautiful scenery of it almost looks like the desolation of Smaug, right? Where you just see this wasteland of what's been happening from the wars and things. But these two have basically just leveled up and leading us into the next episode, if you will. Too. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. Yes, we have also Sansa meeting Dantos. That was in this scene or in this episode as well. That was a pretty important scene. I was going to lead into I think the Lion and the Rose as the next episode.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we also had Brienne meeting up with Elena as well and talking to Jamie, parlaying with Jamie about what they're gonna do with Sansa and things of that nature as well. So that's my
Dawg. I mean, good stuff. I mean, and the thing about this episode, I think there was a lot of hype surrounding this episode, right? Because this happened. This was the season premiere right after the events of the Red Wedding, right? So I mean, this is when this episode shows the Lannisters at their peak. Okay, of their powers, if you will, right? I mean, they just won the war. They're in control of the kingdom. Joffrey's still king. Everything's great, obviously, right? And I think that opening sequence was really powerful, right? It shows Tywin basically, throwing the wolf's pelt, into the furnace and basically breaking down ice into 2 separate swords for the Lannisters themselves, and to be used, for the Lannisters, and and then Tywin's look is like, he has this like look of like satisfaction. He won it. His legacy is secure now. So it's and that's all he really cares about, right? It's his legacy at the end of the day, and or his family's legacy for that matter. And so I think that's great. So I think it really lived up to the hype, if you will, or the expectations, especially, after the events of the Red Wedding. And I mean, I think the introduction of Oberyn was perfect. I mean, Pedro Pascal really, really does a great job, basically showing the viewers, kind of like, what the personification of Oberyn would be if he basically hopped on screen. He has that, that Spanish accent going on, which is evidently what Dorne is supposed to be, it's supposed to be like Spain, right? The equivalent of Spain, essentially, And then you had Arya, right? Getting her sword back, basically killing off Polliver, who stole her sword in season 2, and got the adventures of Arya and the Hound, right? She only has one pony in this picture. She only one, she's basically don't have one horse in this picture, but evidently she picks up another horse, I guess, after they kill off Polliver and she gets her sword back, and it's good stuff. I mean, Jamie, the whole discussion between Jamie and Tywin was excellent. Tywin really, really wants Jamie, right, to go back to Casterly Rock and resume his duties as the heir to Casterly Rock. And Jamie goes, no. I mean, I'm gonna keep this sword, Dad, and I'm still gonna remain the Kingsguard. And it's great stuff. And then the whole interplay between Bronn and Tyrion and Podrick. When they were looking for when they were basically looking at the Dorne sigils. I mean, Podrick knows a lot, right? He knows a lot about those Dorne sigils. So I guess Tyrion trained him well on that part, as opposed to fighting. But still, it was good stuff. Very impressive.
And I did want to mention one last thing, if I could. How it's kind of funny. I did forgot to mention this scene, but he wants to go back into the Kingsguard, right? So he goes back into there, and the first thing that's happening is Joffrey is just making fun of him, basically, right?
Yeah.
Hey, they forgot to write down all your great deeds and things of that nature. So I also had a couple other pretty powerful scenes too. Dany sees the children along the roadside, the Marine.
Yeah. She gets pretty pissed.
Yeah, and then I think we were introduced to the Thens as well, but that's pretty much it on this episode.
Yeah, and the whole scene with Jamie and Joffrey was great. I mean, it just shows you how much of a prick Joffrey was. I mean, and that's why he's like he's probably like the best villain in the whole series, because he is such a he's such a prick, but he's so memorable, being a prick. It's awesome. Because I mean, I don't consider Tywin a villain at all. So some people might or may. I don't. So Joffrey is definitely the best villain. So good stuff, dog. Great choice. So my honorable mention is The Mountain and the Viper. Okay, that's season 4, episode 8, and basically this episode is split up in 4 locations here. We got scenes in King's Landing, the Eyrie, Moat Cailin, okay, and Marine. And basically, in terms of a synopsis, all I can say is that this is the episode where Jorah gets found out, by Sir Barristan that he's been basically feeding information to Varys back at King's Landing. So Daenerys basically dumps Jorah, and he's no longer in the friend zone. He's pretty much in the ignore zone at this point with Dany. And that's really sad. Reek, in the guise of Theon Greyjoy, takes Moat Cailin in this series. Okay. Grey Worm actually becomes a peeping Tom, right? This is the famous bathing scene where, Missandei and Grey Worm are in the river, doing bathing, right? And then, he kind of like, peeps his head up like the Loch Ness monster and sees Missandei, topless. So which is pretty which is pretty fun. And besides that, we have a really, really, really cool fight, right, with Oberyn versus the Mountain, right, where we actually show Oberyn's skill as a fighter. I forgot to mention that Dark Sansa appears in this one, right, for only 1 episode. Evidently, she was only Dark Sansa for 1 episode. Then after this, we never saw her as Dark Sansa. Her hair becomes red again, and she wears normal clothes. So, but at least for 1 episode, she was pretty cool. So, anyway, but the fight scene was actually the crux of this episode, right? And this is what everybody talks about, right? I mean, we see Oberyn as, one of the best fighters in Westeros, right? Taking on, arguably another one of the best fighters in Westeros in a duel, in the trial by combat for Tyrion's life. And great scene all around. Everybody's all pissed off about the fact, why did Oberyn have to talk so much? Why couldn't you just kill the Mountain when he was down? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we all know that. But, theories are bound, right? Maybe he was trying to force a confession. That's what he was trying to do, so they could implicate, Tywin Lannister as the killers of, basically the killers of Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys, during the sack of King's Landing, perhaps. Who knows what his reasons why, he wanted to, wait, to basically finish off the Mountain when he was down. Who knows? But at the end of the day, the Mountain basically gets Oberyn, basically, one of the most graphic scenes of a murder ever, right? He basically uses his thumbs and basically gouges Oberyn's eyes out and crushes his skull. And then you got Ilaria with that awesome scream in the middle of the slide here, basically taken out of the screen by a painting by Edvard Munch. It's basically one of the best forms of expressionism ever shown on TV. So, altogether, I thought this was a really great episode, really action-packed. Everybody talks about the fight, but there's so much else that's going on in this episode, and it really sets the stage for what happens to a lot of these characters later on in the series. What do you think, Dawg?
Oh yeah, that's a fantastic episode too. Yeah, I love the beginning with that is in the beginning of this episode when Reek takes Moat Cailin, right?
Yep.
And and then leading into this fight, and there was a fantastic like Captain Crunch sound while Oberyn's screaming, and then Laria screaming too. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The only thing I wish they would have done was made the fight a little bit more like in the book, I think, where there was like a lot of people just like absolutely running for their lives by the end of it. And I wanted to see Tyrion puke by the end of it too, because I think he loses his breakfast, doesn't he, at the end of it?
Yeah, he loses a lot of stuff.
Well, that's the only thing I would have changed about it.
Yeah. And also in the books, right? I mean, the Mountain actually misses Oberyn, and basically he like cuts one of the squires in half accidentally with this big greatsword. And we kind of missed that in this scene, in this battle as well.
Yeah,
that would have been pretty awesome to see that happen too. Like the Mountain killing an innocent. I mean, who would have figured that, right?
Right. Yeah, and it would have just kind of gave a little bit more in depth about trial by combat. Yeah, innocent bystanders can get killed in trial by combat. Just kind of like getting hit by a foul ball in a baseball game.
Yeah. I mean,
but I kind of wanted to see yeah, him do that. And, just people just absolutely running for their lives, by the end of this, complete chaos and madness at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to see Tyrion lose his lunch or his breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was losing his lunch when he figured out that he was gonna die, because Oberyn couldn't shut up. So, and yeah, and the whole thing about, I mean, what was I mean, a really sad scene I thought was the whole scene with Jorah. It was like, he gets found out, right, that he's feeding information. He was feeding information to back to King's Landing, and Dany, just basically dumps him. I mean, the poor guy. I think she says something like, "Don't touch me, don't talk to me. You're out of here." It's like, into the exile zone, man. Into the ignore zone. You're nothing to me anymore. That's some harsh stuff that went that went out of her mouth at that time.
Yeah, after all they'd been through.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was rough.
I mean, good stuff. I mean, love this episode. It was action packed and a lot of cool stories that tied everything around. And I totally forgot about the Arya scene, right? I mean, this is actually the scene where, they actually arrive at the Vale, and then the Knight at the Bloody Gate tells the Hound Arya that, hey, your aunt's dead, and she starts busting out in laughter. So I forgot about that scene as well.
Yeah,
I mean, of course. Yeah, of course, she didn't realize that Sansa wasn't in the Vale, so.
Right.
Just narrowly missed one other. So, all right. So let's get into our top 5 now. And we have at number 5. Go ahead,
Yep.
Dawg.
All right. Yeah. My number 5 here, folks, is season 1, episode 6, A Golden Crown. And I think, this is definitely one of my favorite episodes. I don't think there's a scene in here where, I wasn't intrigued by, the characters or the story plot that was going on. And just, some very memorable scenes are kind of packed into this episode. This was directed by David Minahan. I might have butchered that name, but my apologies if I did. The story was by Dan and Dave and Jane Espenson, excuse me. So, and it came out on May 22nd, 2011. I think this scene, we have Bran. I think he has a dream with the three-eyed raven. That's kind of I think that might be one of his first dreams with the three-eyed raven, but Hodor shows up, gets him in the saddle. So we meet he has the encounter with the wildlings and Osha. I think it's Osha in this story, right? Yeah. So, but we had a nice scene prior to that with Theon and Robb. And Robb basically tells Theon he's not a Stark, things of that nature, while Theon was trying to give Robb a pep talk about, going to war and things of that nature, going after Jaime Lannister, I believe. And but that was pretty much foreshadowing what was to come between, the rift between Theon Greyjoy and Robb Stark. So I thought that was pretty important. But then, Theon does come to the rescue, and Robb still kind of berates him about it. But there's still so many other powerful scenes. Actually, this episode opens up with Ned Stark awakening from his encounter with Jaime, and the first thing he sees, is Cersei and then Robert, and we also see the foreshadowing of Robert's doom, basically, also when he strikes Cersei, right? So, and Robert basically kind of forces Ned, to take putting the pin back on, or he's gonna put it on Jaime Lannister, things of that nature, right? We have a powerful scene where, on the hunting scene, of course, with Renly and Robert. The throne room scene where Ned, basically sentences Gregor Clegane to death. That's one of the most memorable Ned Stark scenes of all time, right? I can, at least I can bring you justice, right? Things of that nature, right? And then, I think, the most memorable thing I remember from this episode, other than the finale, if you will, but this is where I became a huge Tyrion Lannister fan, was when he got moored to get him up in front of Lysa, and basically coerced her into getting his trial by combat going. and his confession was, you know, absolutely hilarious. And you know, what came after that was, you know, some of the most memorable moments, you know, of this TV series. And then, of course, the ending for Viserys was absolutely fantastic. How, you know, when, you know, we had, I think we had an encounter with him and Jorah where he was going to try to take the dragon eggs and things of that nature. And we could see where Jorah was pretty much going to stand by Dany now. And Viserys, Viserys has basically lost, you know, all his backing from pretty much everyone, right? All he has is these dragon eggs, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but by the time he comes in, all these Dothraki are absolutely laughing at him, right? They're looking at him, and Dothraki just, you know, looking at Khal Drogo saying, "Hey, that's the guy that walks," you know, and then Drogo's just laughing at him, right? And then it gets, you know, super serious by then, right? And then we get the terrible, you know, or the crown that men will tremble to behold, right? And that word is such a great word for him to hear, because that's the kind of king he wants to be, right? He wants to be a king that's, when you see him, you should tremble in fear, right? So what a perfect word to get him enticed into, you know, dropping his sword and into his doom, if you will. So trying to think of anything I might have missed here from my notes here. Yeah, we had Sansa and you know, Septim Ordain, right? Both the sisters actually had some pretty great scenes there. We had Syrio Forel and Arya, right, where Arya's, you know, she's in fear about her father and what's going on, you know, what's troubling her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also Sansa with Septim Ordain, how she's just being a little, you know, a little snot, if you will, right? But then Eddard comes in and talks about how, hey, I'm going to take you guys to Winterfell now,
mm-hmm.
or, you know, I'm sending you away. But then Sansa, in her, you know, teen angst or whatever, right, gives Ned the clue about, you know, hey, get back into that book,
Yep.
and you know, find out about, you know, about this lineage and things of that nature, right? And basically leading Ned into his death, right? So Ned followed the exact footsteps of the last hand that died. So that's what really intrigued me into the story too, because that's when you're basically following along a story about the Lord, that, you know, how he got killed, basically, right? And he's basically following the footsteps of the prior hand that got killed, until Tyrion comes along and kind of fixes that a little bit.
Yeah, but you know, but Joffrey loves me. We're gonna have, you know, a bunch of princes and a bunch of princesses. You know, I'm gonna be queen, father. Nah, yeah, good old Sansa and her teen angst, you know, and her love for Prince Joffrey here. Yeah, in full effect here. And did anybody ever figure out what was the whole joke, you know, behind Tyrion's honeycomb and a jackass that he got interrupted about? I mean, I haven't figured it out, but I'm sure somebody's figured out the whole honeycomb and jackass joke. I'm sure there's a YouTube video about that. And I also want to preface this by saying, you know, as a scientist, that you cannot have a pot of melted gold over an open cook fire. An open cook fire, basically with the best quality coals, can go up about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and gold melts at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, you got to have a magic pot, or basically a magic, you know, or a magic set of coals in order to get up that high to basically melt gold and actually have that gold basically be poured over Viserys' head. So just saying that as a fact. Okay, unless that pot was a crucible and originally it was basically melted in a furnace, but I didn't see anything like that going on in this scene. So good old D&D with alternative facts again. But besides that, Dawg, great episode, intense. Loved it. Right? I mean, I think the whole scene of between Tyrion, basically, you know, forcing that trial by combat, but just making joke after joke, you know, was just awesome. I mean that was pure Tyrion, you know, and it was hilarious at the most. I mean, and then I mean, and you can see like Catelyn Stark's face just kind of like getting all worried because, oh shit, you know, he is gonna get his trial by combat, because, you know, she saw Lysa just get, you know, more angry and more angrier as, you know, Tyrion kept on talking and making those jokes. And yeah, poor Vardis Egan. I mean, going through the moon door, you know, because Bronn fought dirty. Oh, that's too bad, Lysa, for you. Okay, okay. I mean, Vardis Egan, right? He fought clean. Look what happened to him, right? He's through the moon door. So, what can you say? It was a great episode. Yeah, and the whole thing about a lot of people missed that, but yeah, that dude in the lower left hand corner is actually Beric Dondarrion, and I think the actor might have changed, perhaps because yeah, definitely has a lot more hair than the current Beric Dondarrion does. But
yeah, they definitely changed the actor. I wanted to give him some props for being the first Beric Dondarrion.
Yeah. And yeah. First Beric Dondarrion, that nameless actor in the lower left-hand corner of Dawg Slide. And but yeah, it was great stuff. Robert boar hunting, that's always classic, especially the way he was berating, Renly. I thought that was perfect during the hike. And yeah, great episode, Dawg. Good choice.
Thank you.
All right. So my fifth pick is Blackwater. Okay, some people might have it higher on their list, but I don't know. I mean, when I was looking at this list, there are at least 4 I thought were a lot better than Blackwater. Were better than Blackwater. Blackwater, basically the penultimate episode of season 2, so that's season 2, episode 9, and the whole episode was actually set in King's Landing. Okay, and again, there's a lot of, I mean, a lot of really important stuff happened in this episode. Okay, basically Tyrion gets a scar, right? That's pretty important. This is the first time that we see Stannis fail. Okay, he seemed to be like this really cool, really badass, stern guy, and then all of a sudden he fails in his attempt to take over at King's Landing here. Sansa gets to lick Heart Eater. That's Joffrey's second sword. I think that's pretty cool. Let's see. Bronn proves that he's a singer, right? Remember he sang the Reigns of Castamere at the bar, with the prostitute sitting on his lap, and he proves that he's an Olympic level archer too, right? By firing that that arrow, like 300 yards away, and basically, lighting up the whole chain on fire. So that was pretty cool. And at the end of the day, we have Tywin saving the day. My man Tywin. That's right. He's awesome, and nobody can disagree with the fact that Tywin Lannister is pretty freaking awesome. But anyway, great episode. Great cinematography in terms of the lighting, right? I mean, this episode had a really special kind of lighting, in my opinion, right? It was kind of dark, and the lighting was pretty much like almost like fire lights, kind of fireside lighting, if you will, during the whole battle. Okay, which may or may not mean something to other people around here, but I think it just kind of helps move the episode along. That hey, we're dealing with wildfire here, the hound's afraid of fire. That's why he took off in the battle. There's a lot of subplots here, involving fire and the use of fire, if you will, in this episode. And great stuff. We saw Cersei at her motherly best, right? She's about ready to kill her son just in case the Baratheons came in and took over King's Landing. So really, really cool stuff. Great battle scene. Probably the second best battle scene of the whole series, and I loved it. Poor Davos losing his son. In the books he loses 4 sons or 3 sons, but in here he only loses 1 son in this battle. So, that's that's a net of 2 if you think about it between the book and the show. So good on Davos for losing only 1 son in this episode. But besides that, great writing, great story, great special effects, and it's my number 5 pick.
Yeah, fantastic pick here, Milt. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get on what you were talking about, the darkness thing, and I'm thinking that maybe that's kind of like symbolizing the loom of Stannis lingering over, right? Because I'm thinking of the the Stannis scenes prior to this. They're kind of dark and things of that nature, so maybe it's kind of foreshadowing that lingering doom, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Or impending doom, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I had one question for you. Who's a better archer, Bronn or Blackfish?
Well, if you compare the accuracy and distance, Bronn takes the Blackfish. I think the corpse of Hoster Tully may have been maybe 100 yards away when Blackfish hit that boat. But I mean, going across the river, going across the bay, I mean, that was probably at least 200 to 300 yards away. But yeah. But then again, I mean, he only has to get close to ignite that wildfire, right? So the Blackfish had a smaller target probably than what Bronn did.
That's what I was thinking too. But yeah. I mean, they're both impressive shots, I think.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Olympic level. All right. Well, any other thoughts, Doug, before we head on out to number 4 on your list?
Um, yeah, I trying to think of anything else in this. Yeah, I think some of the most, uh, strongest scenes from our actors in this episode are, kind of their coming out party, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's head on to number 4. And Dog, go for it. What's number 4 on your list?
My number 4 here, folks, is And Now His Watch Has Ended from season 3. This is episode 4. This came out on April 21st of 2013. And it was written by the director was Alex Graves and written by Dan and Dave. So this is one of the most one of my most memorable episodes of all time because the final scene when Danny takes the Unsullied. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but when she takes the Unsullied, that scene cemented me as a Game of Thrones fan for life. So I'll never forget this episode. And there's so much that goes on in this episode that's I just thought was like really important or memorable scenes or really strong foreshadowing scenes, things of that nature. Right? We had, for instance, Ramsay, toying with Theon, right, and basically revealing that he's the bastard of Ramsay Bolton, right? Because he toys with him and takes him back to the rack, right? So we had that scene where Theon was basically being remorseful about what he'd done to Rob and things of that nature. Kind of talking about the episode I talked about a little bit ago, how that was foreshadowing their breakup, if you will. Had the great scene with Tyrion trying to get information from Varys, about who hired or who told Sir Mandon Moore to attack him, right? Was it Joffrey or the Queen? Things of that nature, right? And Varys is trying to calm him down about you'll have your revenge in time. You just got to be patient, right? And then we're getting this awesome backstory about Varys, and and basically he's got his revenge in a box, right? And revealing this to Tyrion. So that's a very powerful scene there. We had a great scene with Joffrey and Marjorie, with Olenna and Cersei, and kind of what was to come with that. Kind of going around the catacombs and things of that nature in the sup too. So the banner with Olenna and Cersei's great, as you can see, Marjorie's starting to get her claws into Joffrey, if you will. By the end of it, she's got Joffrey actually waving to the people and they're cheering. I think the last time Joffrey met the people, they were trying to kill him in the streets. So, there was and you could see how that was eating at Cersei. So there's just some absolutely fantastic acting going on in that. Again, I mentioned my most memorable scene was, Danny taking the Unsullied, of course, but Craster meeting his end. When Craster meets his end, north of the wall, that's some of the most fantastic, endings I've seen, on for a bad guy on television or in the films for that matter. So, as vile and disgusting as Carl Tanner can be, I mean, I was absolutely like, yeah, when he stuck it to Crafter there. So, and we also had some very, this episode opens up with Jaime Lannister on his horse with his hand around his neck. So a very powerful scene, because this was kind of like our first time where we were like, oh man, I was kind of feeling sorry for Jaime. You're right, because before I really didn't like the guy or something. He pushed a little kid out of a window and things of that nature. But now we'd seen, now this character has had his his strength is gone now, right? And he's just being taunted and things of that nature. And then Brienne kind of gives him a pep talk, and he starts eating and things of that nature, right? So overall, definitely one of my favorite episodes of all time, Milt.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I mean, this episode for me were noticeable for two things. The first, again, was the awesomeness of Carl Fukin Tanner, the legend from Gin Alley, right? He's the guy that I want to be on my. He's the guy, one guy that I want to be on my side in a bar fight with those, like, with his skill, those twin daggers, right? You can't beat that. And secondly, we also had the appearance of probably the worst businessman of the entire series in Krosny's, Mo Lacklaws or something like that. That was his name. He was basically the guy who owned the Unsullied in this episode, right? And he basically traded them away to Danny for basically for her dragon. And evidently he didn't have any guards with him, right? Because once he got the dragon, all Danny had to do was basically say the word Dracarys, and boom, Krasny's is basically burnt toast there. I mean, you would have thought that Krasny's would have had like a couple of guards with crossbows, set on Daenerys just in case she pulled any kind of shit, But evidently, he's not used to these kind of deals. Trading 10,000 Unsullied for a dragon. I mean, I don't know. I would take a little bit more precaution in that, but Krosny's didn't, and he's supposed to be a wise master of Astapor. So go figure, right?
Right. Yeah, and all those people were probably in shock looking at the dragon because nobody'd seen a dragon in so long, so they were all just like, and she's back there just hey, touch your toes, step 3 places, and
yeah. Hey, yeah, I haven't done these big drug deals before. I'm not saying that, I know anything about it, but, I was doing a big drug deal, sort of like what this is going on here, when I have a bunch of guards or henchmen with with crossbows and all sorts of stuff, set on the other party just in case they pulled some crap on me. But Krosny's didn't. So good going on you, Krasny's, for being a shitty businessman. Also, yeah, and this is also cool because they had one scene, I guess, with Varys, right? Basically telling Tyrion in this room, like, his origins and what happened to him, and how he was gelded and how he became a eunuch and so forth. And he opens that crate in his room, and all of a sudden, there's a sorcerer who tormented and basically gelded Varys, and he was a kid. So, and Tyrion's going, damn, dude, you're keeping all those kind of skeletons in your closet. But again, the guy's not a skeleton, right? He's actually alive still. So, I don't know. Yeah, great episode. Yeah, Marjorie playing Joffrey was awesome. I loved it. So, shows you the power of a women's guile, if you will. So,
right. And we also, I also forgot to mention, we also had some great stuff with Varys, kind of after this, he finds out about Littlefinger's plans for Sansa, and then he goes and talks to Olenna. So we had the cool banter with Olenna and Varys as well in this episode too.
Yeah. So really, really fun episode, good stuff, and you can't beat the legend from Gin Alley doing his business with Craster and Jorah Mormont in the same episode.
Absolutely. I think that's all I have for that one, Mel.
Yeah, good stuff. My number 4 is The Reigns of Castamere. Okay, season 3, episode 9, and a lot of people just remember this episode for the Red Wedding, but there's a lot of other stuff that happened in this episode that set the stage, for future episodes and future character development here. Okay, it's basically set in 4 places here, right? We got the twins, okay, where the Red Wedding happened. North of the Wall, okay, where Sam and where Sam and Giddy are coming down, and then we have the South of the Wall, where Bran and Hodor and Osha and Rickon are coming up, and we also have a setting in Yunkai where basically Danny, with the help of the newly recruited Dario, basically tries to take over that city, and really, really good stuff here. Basically, we got Edmure basically being married, which is cool. Jon breaks up with Ygritte in this episode. So no longer she's kissed by fire anymore, if you will. Basically, or he's kissed by fire. Essentially, Jon reveals his true loyalties, right, which is to the Night's Watch by refusing to kill that elderly horse breeder at that mill, right, and basically. Ygritte basically fires an arrow into the old guy. He dies, and then Jon just gets really uptight and basically shoves Ygritte into Tormund, and basically kills Orell because Orell hates Jon, and the eagle gives him a big nice scar on his face. So that's pretty cool. in Young Kai, what's happening here is that, Dario's newly recruited. So basically he's helping Donnie take over, with help from the Second Sons, take over Young Kai. And of course, Jorah and Barristan are going, no, we don't trust this mercenary to sell a sword, blah, blah, blah. And this is Dario 1.0, by the way. So Heisman, I guess that's his name. And but Dario, shows that he's a pretty effective military commander, good at tactics, and he takes over Young Kai with hardly any bloodshed. So, which is pretty cool. So Dany gets her second slave city in Slaver's Bay. And lastly, of course, the big news here is well, actually, one more thing. Sam and Gilly are escaping, right? So they're trying to get to Castle Black from north, and basically Bran and Hodor and those guys are coming up, right? So a lot of the Gilly and Jon breakup scenes were actually witnessed by Bran, right? I mean, he was actually at the site, but he couldn't say anything or do anything. I think he basically affected the battle between Jon and the wildlings by warning to Summer, and Summer kind of did some distractions in the scene that allowed Jon to basically run away. But I think the last thing I want to talk about, obviously, the big thing here is the Red Wedding, the breaking of guest right by Walder Frey, and basically killing off of three main characters in the show, right? We got Talisa, Rob's wife, who gets killed along with her unborn child, and that was kind of a shock considering that in the books, right, Rob's wife is still at River Run, so she doesn't actually get killed. She does not get killed at the Red Wedding, but over here we have that extra death going on. Of course, we have Catelyn Stark being killed, as well as the King of the North, Robb Stark, being betrayed and killed by the Boltons and Freys. And I admit, I only watched this episode once, only because the whole Red Wedding thing was just so brutal to me. All those people dying by these really nefarious ends. And but it was really, really powerful, and that Red Wedding scene was really, really well done, I thought. So what can you say? You also had the drummer from Coldplay, all right, up on the balcony, playing the Reigns of Castamere during the Red Wedding, on the orders of the Frey. So that was pretty cool, a world champion. And it was just really I thought it was really brutal. I think this was probably more brutal than the books in terms of what happened in the wedding hall, in the feast hall itself, because Catelyn, in the books, kills basically one of the sons of Walder Frey, who happens to be a fool, right? Jingle bells. But in this episode, she actually kills Walder Frey's wife, so that's pretty brutal. And the whole thing that surrounding Talisa Stark and the way she went out was, I thought, really bad, really, really, really powerful and horrible at the same time. Basically, stabbing her in the belly and killing the unborn baby as well as her. Really sad stuff. The last we see of Michelle Fairley and Richard Madden, also main characters of the Stark family, and really powerful stuff, and sad to see it happen. But I kind of knew going on what would happen, but it was really, really well done, and you can't make up for reading something like this in the books and then watching it on screen.
That's a great episode as well, and arguably the most shocking episode in the history of television. Really, when we really think back on it, right? Mm-hmm. Thing I want to mention was before, I read ahead. I read all about, what happened. I think I was in one of those wikis at one time or something right now. I was reading on all the characters and things of that nature and what happens to them and stuff. And I think I got to Catelyn Stark, right? And I started seeing, I was like, ooh, who's this Lady Stoneheart? What's that all about, right? And then I started reading about, how she died. And that led me into, where's chapter such and scene, blah, blah, blah. And, so I read the wedding chapter, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of remember them kind of fighting back, and I remember the son that was the fool, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I was watching the scene, I was like, I kind of wish they would have fought back, but it made more sense to make it even more devastating, right? Replace the fool with his new wife, right? Exactly. Things of that nature, right? To make it even look even more harrowing, things of that nature, right? Yeah. Have him do this to the pregnant lady, right? And it'll make it even even more grotesque and more devastating, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so by the time that you're done as an audience member or viewer, you know, when those credits are rolling, you are just absolutely drained and devastated, and you know, you're just speechless, left speechless, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and you know, and I have to say that the lighting in terms of in the Red Wedding was, I think, really, really awesome, right? Is again, it was basically candlelight lighting at this point, right? And it's just like what they would have in the Middle Ages, right, where all the feast halls were basically lit up by candles, right? So the actual lighting here was great. I mean, you can see in those pictures, right? You had that kind of that amber tone going on in these pictures from these scenes from the episode, and I think that just lent a lot more atmosphere to that whole scene, if you will, that whole so that whole episode, so that whole scene. So I thought, you know, it was again great episode. Again, I only watched it once because I don't think I can watch this again if it's that traumatic. But I remember it, okay, because a lot of stuff happened here.
right. I do want to ask you one question as a book reader there. How did you feel about the line that Roose said to Rob at the end, where he said the Lannisters send their regards, as opposed to Jaime Lannister sends his regards?
Yeah, in the books it was Jaime Lannister sends his regards. I think probably in the show they wanted Jaime to be a good guy, right? Right, because like in the episode here, in the episode that you mentioned, right before your number 4, right? No, now his watch has ended, right? They're trying to make Jaime into a very sympathetic character.
Oh, you know, yeah, and I guess kind of answering my own question.
Yeah,
I guess, you know, I was thinking that those, you know, as far as that line being there, mm-hmm. it would really only have some implications if they were using Stoneheart, right?
Yeah.
If they were using Stoneheart, that might kind of come into play, but they're not. You know, evidently they're not using her on the show, right? So
yeah, and no, and it sounds more evil to implicate, you know, the entire family than just, you know, Jaime Lannister like they did in the books. So
okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, yeah, big time traumatic episode here. Number 4, Reigns of Castamere. And we are in your top 3, folks. And go for it, Dawg. What is your number 3?
All right, yeah, folks. My number 3 episode here is Watchers on the Wall from season 4. This is episode 9. This came out on June 8th of 2014, written by Dan and Dave and directed by Neil Marshall. So yeah, one of the more epic, you know, battle sequences and fighting things, and you know, we get to see some new creatures and kind of what this realm has to offer, you know, beyond the wall and things of that nature, right? And you know, the whole episode takes place, you know, at the wall. And I think by the time this episode was over, this is where I kind of shifted, and I was more interested at what was going on at the wall than anywhere else, you know, kind of in Westeros and pardon me, in Essos too, right? So after this episode, I was like totally focused on the Jon Snow storyline and things of that nature, right? So some fantastic shots, especially when Jon comes back, you know, down from the wall, and there's like a really long shot that kind of shows the whole entire landscape of what's happening here at this battle and things of that nature. Even characters we hate, we're kind of rooting for, and they have, you know, some epic moments like Alistair Thorne, right, with his speech and things of that nature. The beginning with them, you know, kind of talking about, you know, hey, Snow, you should have, you know, I should have listened to you, and you know, you were right and things of that nature, but you know, I still hate you and you hate me and things of that nature. But right now we got to stand together and, or we're going to die basically. Right. So, anything I else want to, oh yeah, the great arrow. I love like when they're attacking the south wall and, the arrows and, you know, that are coming, you know, towards them and the ones that they're shooting at them. I thought those were, shot fantastically. We have some powerful scenes with, Sam and Pippin, of course, right, and the end of Pippin, of course, was pretty rough to go through. I love the shots where they had the archers kind of hanging over the wall and shooting down, things of that nature too. And yeah, it was great to see you know, some of these magical creatures that we'd heard about before, right? But now actually getting to see them kind of using in battle and things of that nature, right? The giants, you know, shooting those big you know, pikes or whatever the hell they were, right? I don't know how tall is the wall, like 1,200 feet,
I think
600
it's
feet,
700
no?
feet or something like that in the book.
Right.
It's
So yeah, it's a
described.
hell of a shot. So they
Yeah.
should have used those a little more often, I think. But
Hmm.
one of my, you know, you know, some, you know, it takes a little bit to get into this one because I was kind of, I think the Sam and John stuff kind of drags on
Hmm.
just a little bit too long with, you know, him wanting to know what it's like to be with a girl and stuff of that nature, right? It's just like, oh, kind of getting that cringe factor going, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly right. Minutes before the battle starts, he still wants to know,
Right. But yeah,
what
there's
sex
great,
is like.
you know, even that, you know, we have a great scene with, you know, the, with Tormund's, you know, clan there too. And he has this,
Mhm.
you know, the talk about the bear and things of that nature too.
Mhm.
And, yeah, yeah, there's some good scenes with, aim on there
Yeah.
as well. And, yeah, the 1-1 or not 1-1, Mag the Mighty, right?
Hmm.
You know, when he's, you know, trying to get in the gate and our five, watchers on the wall there,
Yeah.
you know, holding down the gate for John. So, and Gren meeting his end there. So sad ending.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should hold a moment of silence for Pip and Gran. This last episode that we actually see both of them alive. So, moment of silence for a couple of John's sidekicks here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Pip gets his eye poked out by a crossbow bolt, and Gran basically gets smothered by a fallen giant. So, good deaths in both cases here. Yeah, great episode. This scene was, I guess, this episode was completely set in the at Castle Black, right? I mean, I don't think there were any other scenes outside of Castle Black here, and yeah, great battle scene, and the weapons that they were using to fight off the wildling invaders were pretty cool, right? I mean, they had, I mean, they were basically pouring, burning tar down the wall on them, on the war mammoths. They actually and I don't know how good of a strategy this is, but they were basically roping archers right down the wall to basically shoot arrows at the invaders, and I'm not sure if that's really. I mean, I don't know what the difference is between roping them down 10 feet or 20 feet versus just firing them from behind the wall. I mean, are you really going to gain that much of an advantage shooting at invaders by doing that?
I mean, it looks cool for sure, but it might be just a safe. It might be safer to just drop the scythe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and that's what they did. And yeah, I mean, basically, get more guys, get more of the wildlings up climbing the wall, and then drop the scythe on them, and you could probably take out 50 to 100 of them. Trying to climb the wall. I mean, that's what I would have done. But hey, hey, I'm not a skilled battle commander like Jon Snow is, or who was up there. It was Dalor Zed, right? Was commanding the wall, on top of the wall, when all that stuff was happening because Alistair left, and then Jon Snow had to go down there. Uh,
Right. That's where
so.
we saw kind of John coming into his own here, right? And
Yeah.
then we saw like where John was going to definitely be a super leader, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And kind of take command, for us in the future.
Yeah, and we also saw the first hints of John's plot armor here by basically the Styre, the Magna of Then basically, shoves his head against an anvil, and yet John doesn't die or go unconscious. He just kind of goes fuzzy a little bit. And all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, he's fighting again. So evidently, he has a hard head, or he's made out of plot armor. So
He took a freaking anvil to the face, and then just
exactly.
an everyday carpenter tool, and took out the Then's leader, right? The
Yep.
Magnar of the Then's, right?
Styre, yeah,
Because
Styre.
and you know what? It was a kingly death for him, though.
Yeah, it was, and also, I mean, Alistair Thorne. I mean, he treated himself with he showed himself with respect. I mean, he was a badass, in this episode. I mean, everybody thought he was a stern guy and everything else, and he was kind of a prick to John. But when it came down, to it, he knew how to fight and he fought, well. So, he proved his loyalty definitely, and who can ever forget the scene where basically Sam sees Janos Lint basically pissing in his pants with Gilly in the storeroom. I mean that's always an awesome sight to see Janos Lint behaving that way. And yeah, and lastly, poor Magna Mighty, right? the King of the Giants meets his end in this episode, and yep, great episode, great battle,
Egret.
and poor Egret gets killed. So last we see of her as well. All right. All right, number 3 on my list is Winter is Coming. Okay, that is the first episode of the entire series, season 1, episode 1. Okay, and I have to put this in because this basically sets the stage for the entire show. Okay, it's set in 3 places: Winterfell, north of the Wall, in the beginning, and also Pentos with Daenerys. So I mean, this episode was really, really jam-packed, guys, and I'm amazed at how much stuff they basically stuffed into this one episode. I mean, we had a White Walker coming up, right? Killing old Robar Royce. We have direwolves, right, being introduced for the first time. We have Ned curing Will's headache, right, by chopping off his head. That's always a cool thing. Robert visits Winterfell, treats Cersei like shit and basically heads to the crypts right away. We find out that Jon's a bastard because Tyrion says he's a bastard. We find out that Tyrion really likes whores. So and he also has a lighter hair color in this episode that progressively turns darker as the season goes on and as the years go on, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure they just ran out of that hairspray or that dye, or the budget got cut or something like that. Dany gets married, to big old Aquaman or Khal Drogo. And lastly, we have Jaime and Cersei getting it on, and Bran acting like the peeping Dom, and basically subsequently gets pushed out of the tower. So a lot of great stuff here. So we were introduced to the Starks, okay, one of the primary families of the entire show. We were introduced to the Lannisters, okay, Cersei and Jaime. We were introduced to King Robert. We were introduced to basically the other main character, the main protagonist of the series, which is Daenerys Targaryen, and how she goes from a little girl into basically into a Khaleesi by marrying Khal Drogo. So there's just a lot of great stuff here, and we get insights into into the Stark family's characters here, right? I mean, we have Sansa, right, being I want to be the princess, please make Daddy go to King's Landing, and that kind of stuff. We have Arya being the tomboy, wearing that helmet and running around, asking where the imp is. And, we get introduced to, Eddard Stark, the very honorable Lord of Winterfell, who only says the man who passes the sentence must swing the sword. And he sure did that. We're introduced to Jon Snow, the brooding bastard, and Ghost, and Tyrion and the Lannisters. So, really good stuff. Anytime you have a really powerful or really good TV series, I always kind of want to look back at the first episode, because a lot of times in these television shows, the first episode is not really that great, right? In fact, it's kind of horrible. Like if you go back to like Seinfeld, which is one of my favorite TV series of all time, the first episode, the premiere episode of Seinfeld was really, really bad. But this episode kind of like goes against that goes against it in a way, because this episode was excellent, and actually was adapted very well from the books, from the first chapter of the books. So, first and second chapters of the book, actually. And, loved it. And without this episode, we couldn't have any more. So, good stuff. And that's why it's my number 3.
Yeah, this is a fantastic episode as well, Mel. Mel, I think probably I've watched this episode more than any other episode, come to think of it. Probably, because it's, it's the first one, of course, but I don't know what it is. I think this episode does get a little, it's a little underrated, I think. And, the first time I had, watched the episode, I hadn't, I wasn't a book reader or anything, but I really appreciated the way that, how it opened, and how, like when Robert gets off his horse, people kneel, think just little subtle details about that. I was like, this is probably really cool to read in the pages, if you will, right? Things of that nature. But I thought it was a really good introduction for all these great characters. And yeah, because there wasn't any characters other than maybe Sansa that was maybe getting a little irritating at times, right? But yeah, there is a lot that happens in this episode too, and
Yeah.
you know, by the end of it, and you're just like in absolute shock because I had never seen, you know, an episode where a guy just shoves a little kid out of a window, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I was definitely ready to get into the next episode for sure after this one.
Yeah.
So
You know,
fantastic, Mel.
and it was also kind of different in a way that they actually showed the White Walker, right, the ultimate enemy in the opening scene of this show. Because you know, a lot of times, you know, the ultimate enemy is like hiding behind the shadows, right, and you really don't see them until like further down in a series lifespan, right? But we see, you know, we see the White Walkers, you know, the mythical, you know, enemy show up in the first series here, in the first opening moments of this series, and it was great. So you know, you already had your kind of like your opinion of the show. Okay, it's going to be part mystical, part magical, but also it's going to be a lot of politics going around. You know, with the Lannisters, with King Robert, and with Daenerys Targaryen, you know, basically being married in a political, you know, basically being forced into a political marriage with Khal Drogo. So you have that mix of magic and politics already in this first episode.
Right. And it's like, yeah, it's like so the characters and the politics behind it and things of that nature are so powerful that we kind of forget that, yeah, this is still a magical realm where there are, you know, ice creatures and things of that nature, right? And demons and things of that nature, right? Because, you know, they do such a great job of keeping us intrigued into their little, you know, political realm, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good stuff. So, all right, guys, we are in our top 2 now. And what does Dawg have for us at number 2?
All right. Yep. So, folks, my number 2 is Blackwater. And this came out on May 27th, 2012, directed by Neil Marshall, who also directed Watchers on the Wall, the last episode I picked. And our writer here was George R. R. Martin. So thank you, George, for this episode. So, yeah, what can I say about it? This episode is fantastic. Just like the last episode I talked about where we had Watchers on the Wall, where that one takes all, you know, place all at, you know, at Castle Black. This one takes place all at King's Landing. The tone, the pacing is perfect from the beginning where we have Davos and his son, and they're talking about, you know, what's to come, and his son has all these glorious plans that Stannis is going to be on the throne, and Davos is like, you know, we'll see. You know, let's put Joffrey's head on the spike first, and then we'll get to, you know, all his delusions of grandeur, if you will, right? So, but we, you know, now we get into, you know, what's going on with the Lannisters, of course, right? We have the Joffrey and Sansa scene, and you know, with Tyrion and Bronn, you know, getting, you know, right prior to the battle. I think right prior to that, we have the Hound and Bronn also having a great encounter. You know, they're actually about to have a little showdown, if you will, right? And then the bells start ringing, and you know, the Hound and Bronn are like, okay, let's we're gonna have one drink and then head on out to the battle, right? So, one thing I found great about this is that you see Joffrey walking into like kind of like his first look at what's about to come, and the first thing he sees is a runaway horse, right? And it just kind of reminds me of what's to come, right? With Sandor about to leave, right? And just chaos, if you will, and people not going to, you know, they're not going to really follow this king, right? It's just going to be kind of like a runaway horse, if you will, right? But you know, by the time you know, we see the fleet and Joffrey's freaking out about, you know, where's our fleet and things of that nature. And then we have the funny banter with, you know, tell the Hand, you know, that the king said, blah, 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 blah. And then you hear the Hound going, you know, the king asked you a question, blah, blah, blah. And going back with Loras and, or Lancel, right? But that stuff is pretty funny, right? But we see the ship coming in, right? The abandoned ship, right? And Davos is like, you know, there's nobody on board. and then Roy Dotrice walks up, right? So we're like, oh, it's the wildfire guy, right? And then he gives Tyrion the signal, and I thought it was a great. It was it was great to see Roy Dotrice in the scene. Of course, it's perfectly memorable scene when we get to see the wildfire go off, and all these people are just like, right, and Joffrey's like, except for like Roy Dotrice back there, and you can kind of see him just kind of like so it's little things like that I love to watch. Milt was talking about this episode earlier, folks, so I won't get into it too much, but we had some very powerful scenes with the Hound, of course, right, where his arc was going, F the King, and his when he meets with Sansa, of course, right? So that what does that foreshadow down the future, right? I'm really looking forward to the Hound encountering Sansa again, of course, and Sansa and Stannis' determination, of course, right? Some of the most I think some of the greatest works from our actors are in this episode. I think especially from Cersei too.
Oh yeah, especially Cersei. Yeah, I think she was great in this one. I mean, especially her stories. Her story to Sansa. While they were all like kind of huddled around with like Ellen Payne, just watching them, with this big axe. So, yeah, I mean, it was really powerful stuff. And then Cersei just like waiting in the throne room, kind of like looking all defeated, about ready to slip the poison pill into Tom, and all of a sudden, Tywin comes in there, and saves the day. I think that was great.
I love that when she's like, "What are you doing?" She's like praying. She's like, "You're so perfect praying." It's just like,
yeah,
so sarcastic and so perfect praying.
And nothing
beats so intriguing and intense.
Oh yeah.
Also, and it's like you had this great explosion, and now all these great battle scenes and stuff, but and then this is how great the show is. They can leave from that scene and go to Lena Headey and Sansa. Yeah. Right, and still have a great, powerful scene, and even the stuff with Varys and Tyrion, and Varys actually, he kind of alludes to telling them about the time he was gelded and things of that nature too. So, there's a lot of even little back scenes that they can get away from the battle and the, and all the explosions and the cool stuff, right, and get into why these characters are still great. And so it's a powerful episode. I love this episode.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. It was my number 5. And yeah, I mean, I forgot to mention Roy Dotrice as the Powermancer. Can't beat that. The voice of all the audiobooks. So yeah, it was good stuff. And I won't belabor that anymore because I already talked about it. And I'll go to my number 2 now. And it is Hardhome. Okay. And a lot of people, again, just like a couple other episodes I mentioned, think that this episode was only set in one place, which was north of the wall, up in Hardhome. But actually, there was a lot of stuff that happened in this episode. Basically, we were set north of the wall. We were set in Meereen, okay, and we were set in Braavos, following Arya's adventures, and also in King's Landing. And some really, really great memorable scenes in here. I mean, we have one swinging the fiery tree. I don't know why I didn't bring that tree with him, to the Battle of the Bastards. Hence, you're not going to see Battle of the Bastards in this list of mine. We have Tyrion, Daenerys barbs. This is the first time after, they basically meet at the fighting pits of Meereen, where Tyrion and Jorah back up, in Dany's presence, and Tyrion's basically, convincing Dany, hey, I could be of use for you, girl. I can help you take over Westeros. And next thing you know, he's going to be Hand of the Queen the following season. Arya gets her first assignment, right, as a faceless man, okay, as an oyster girl. So, oysters for sale, bunch of oysters here, tasty oysters, with vinegar and hot sauce in this wheelbarrow. Cersei gets to meet Septa Unella here in this episode. So, this is right after she gets locked up by the High Sparrow, and then she still has her long hair at this point, and Septa Unella is basically, throwing water at her and stuff like that. Good stuff. Septa Unella is always good for entertainment's sake. And we have and then we have the big battle, right, obviously, with between Jon and his gang versus the White Walkers, and we see the full power of the Night King and the White Army in full force here, right, in this episode. I mean, in a way that basically he proves himself to be pretty unbeatable. The fact that he can actually raise dead people into whites and basically grow his armies, infinitely, if you will, with more and more people dying, and really, really memorable characters here. I mean, we had the Lord of Bones showing up until he gets crushed by Tormund Giantsbane. And we were introduced to Karsi, one of the chieftainess of one of the clans of the Wildlings who were stationed up in Hardhome. And she was portrayed very, very nicely, very, very well, in fact, and memorably. And too bad she had to go down. I mean, she was a boss until, she saw those reanimated kids, if you will, being turned into whites. And I mean, really good stuff. We had that duel with the White Walker and Jon, and this is the first time we see Valyrian Steel basically doing his thing against a White Walker. Before that we saw Dragonglass doing their thing with two White Walkers, but this is the first time that we had to see Valyrian Steel doing that. And I remember that look on that White Walker's face, right, when Jon blocked hit the White Walker's ice blade with a long claw. Usually a regular sword would just be frozen and break, right, when an ice blade hits it. But it didn't. Long claw didn't break, and you had that face, that White Walker made. It's like, what the F, what just happened there? And all of a sudden, Jon cuts him in half. And really, really great stuff. Really, really well done in terms of the cinematography, especially in the battle. I mean the camera and lighting were impeccable here. I mean, it really captures what the North feels like, right? What the area north of the wall feels like. Yeah, all that ice, going, all that kind of like frozen mist around. Basically, the Night King is bringing winter with him. Bringing the full force of winter with him in this episode. I mean, with all that mist floating around in this episode, and I mean, at the end of the episode, I mean, you could just see Jon, basically as he's rolling back to the boats, just looking so defeated. It's like, oh crap, how are we gonna actually beat these guys? And how are we gonna basically defend ourselves against the power of this Night King, who can just basically grow his army at will, off the bodies of dead humans. And great stuff. Really, really well done episode. Probably the best battle of the series. I mean, second is Blackwater. And but I can't say enough about this episode. I love it. So it's awesome.
I totally agree with you, Mel, on this episode here. So yeah, that's definitely. I think it's matter of fact, Mel, I think it's one of the greatest episodes in the history of television.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that, but.
Mm-hmm. And while we're at it, let's go to Dawg's number one, and guess what this is, guys? Go for it, Dawg.
yeah. I think this is the greatest episode in the history of television, and. The stuff that comes before the hard home stuff, right? I think the hard home stuff might be like maybe 28 minutes total, right? But it's pretty decent as well too. We have some powerful scenes with Cersei and Qyburn, alluding to what's going to happen with the mountain, and how's he gonna and just we're kind of showing his loyalty to Cersei, if you will, at that, right? And we're kind of seeing Cersei, desperate and beat down and things of that nature too. And again, how this show will make you empathize with the enemy, if you will, right? So great scenes with that too. And we get Arya's first assignment as well. So that started getting a little bit more interesting in Braavos. So. Other things, we had the Jorah, Tyrion, and Dany scene, and Dany, banishing Jorah yet again, and also Tyrion and Dany having a parlay as well, and that was great to see. Peter Dinklage just kind of, making Emilia Clarke better. It seemed like too, not that Emilia Clarke's, weak or anything like that, but just another example of when Tyrion's in a scene with another actor like Amelia Clark or Jorah or Jon or Bronn or any of those other characters, he just makes them better. It just seems like so. Things leading into our fantastic end game battle for the episode, if you will, right? So I love the shot of the beginning of this, where we see the kind of the sky view of Hardhome, if you will, because it's going to lead into when the chaos hits and all those folks are just like running for the boats and things of that nature, right? And and just how it gives that feel of the North, just like you're saying, right? We have Tormund and his encounter with Lord of Bones, and Lord of Bones didn't understand the gravity of the situation, if you will, right? And Tormund took control, and so they had their talk. And I love the scene of I think there's an old man that comes out of a hut. I think just when those dogs are kind of barking,
okay,
right, and you really get that feel of kind of how you're saying the North and things of that nature. And what's so funny is, as they're kind of getting ready to leave, I'm thinking back of Ed, as he's like, it looks like, I think Jon must have told him to hey, make sure you get all those dragon glasses accounted for and put them back in the bag, right? And he's probably like on like, okay, well, 99, I'm missing one, and one's got it, right? And he's like, how do I get this back from? And one's like, what the hell are you looking at, right, buddy? And and Ed's like, okay, yeah, you can have that, right? And but then they hear the dogs, and I think they're the ones that hear the dogs barking first, and they both at the same time have the same expression of, and it's kind of a symbolic of the wildlings and Night Watch guys kind of coming together, but now we have this great scenes of because I'm not a big zombie fan at all. Like, I was never really big in the zombie movies or things of that nature, right? But the way they did whites, right? I know these aren't necessarily zombies, but they're zombie-like beings, right? But this was fantastic, right? These are real whites that have weapons and they can fight, and they move fast, and they can just jump off a freaking mountain and and just get up and keep on moving, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like World War Z. If you watch that movie with Brad Pitt, essentially the zombies are exactly like the whites are exactly like those zombies in World War Z. So
all right,
hard to tell.
The only other thing I wanted to kind of mention was we can get back. Oh, one thing I was kind of hoping for was, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, obviously, now, right? But I was hoping that, like, one day that's how these guys would kind of breach going over the wall, right? I was hoping that, like, the guys Night Watch would just be one night kind of looking up. Yeah. And next thing you know, you just see a whole bunch of these guys just jumping off the wall.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool? It's like, it's like a scene from World War Z again, where basically the zombies are basically stacking on top of one another, climbing that wall, climbing the walls of Jerusalem, if you will, doing the same kind of thing. So, but they have an ice dragon, right? So, or a zombie dragon. It's not really an ice dragon. It's a zombie dragon doing its business for them. So, basically spewing out plasma.
I don't know. I think we might have seen the Night King prior. Did we see the Night King prior to this, Milt?
I'm trying to think where on that we do see the Night King handling the baby.
Yeah, that might have been him too. But
in the Craster episode.
What a fantastic intro! If this was kind of like his, main intro, I guess, if you will, right? Yeah. But, one of the most memorable scenes, and I love how after it's all over and he's staring with Jon, staring back and forth at Jon, and then the credits roll and there's like a dead silence.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's like this eerie music that kind of comes in, and
yeah, I mean, and Jon just looking so defeated. It's like, dang. It's like, what can we do against these guys?
If you're the guy, but I do have a question for you. If you're the guy rowing on that boat, would you be rowing a little bit harder than?
Yeah, it's sort of like, let me get the F out of here kind of thing. Yeah, I know what you mean. But
I mean, a shot and all, but
I mean, maybe they're hoping that one would basically run into the water and kind of give him a big push, to to go faster to the boat. Because I'm kind of wondering how 1-1 basically got out of there. I guess he basically walked along the bottom of the ocean, right, and came up, when the water got shallow, and with the rest of the, with the rest of the Night's Watch guys, and basically, say, hey, yeah, I'm back, guys. I can hold my breath for 7 days. So who knows, or maybe he's a whale and he transformed into a whale, perhaps. I don't know what the powers of a giant is. All right, so my number one, okay, it'll be a big surprise to you guys, but my number one is actually Mother's Mercy, okay? It's basically the last episode of season 5, okay? It's great stuff here. I mean, we were set in Dorne, classic scenes, Dorne, King's Landing, Castle Black, Winterfell, and Braavos. And who can forget, like, these great scenes here? I mean, especially with Tyene and Bronn, right? You want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy. I mean, that is some classic writing by D&D here. And we also have a great scene, with Jon Snow being stabbed, by Alistair and Ollie of all people. We got, Stannis' wife hanging herself, which is pretty cool. And then we have Stannis, one of the major characters, right, of the whole entire series, and yet he basically dies off screen. So thank you very much, D&D, for that, bit of classic writing you got going on there. And of course, we got the Shane Bell, Septa Unella, who can beat that, So all together, these were like fabulous, well-written, well-directed scenes, and it has to be my number one. But I'm just kidding, guys. It's not really Mother's Mercy. In fact, it's probably one of the worst episodes of the worst season ever in Game of Thrones. My number one is actually, to me, one of the most emotional and heartfelt episodes in all of the Game of Thrones series, and that is Fire and Blood, okay, season 1, episode 10. That's the episode right after the beheading of Ned Stark. And to me, this is where a lot of the characters were at their emotional best and their acting best here, especially in the Stark family. I mean, it was set in the Riverlands, King's Landing, Winterfell, and the Dothraki Sea. And, I mean, look at that GIF image of basically Robb Stark. I mean, and the way, how he was reacting to Ned Stark's, his father's death here. He's basically whacking that tree, and then Caitlyn, who's basically just all emotionally distressed and disturbed because, Robb, you've ruined your sword. And then that basically makes him stop, And, they basically hug, and then basically, Robb wants to kill them all. And then, Caitlyn goes, yes, we kill them all, but only after, we rescue your brothers and your sisters. And, we showed Joffrey as one of his worst moments in terms of villainy, right? Where he basically walks Sansa out to the, basically the walls of King's Landing, and basically, shows, basically the heads of her dad, disguised as George W. Bush, evidently, and, and Septim Mordane. And, you can see the anguish in Sansa's face in this scene, and how she saw that Joffrey was like up against the edge of that walkway, and she really wanted to push him down, and the Hound stops her, goes, hey, you better not do this now, and and we see Arya basically leaving King's Landing, right, onto her adventures up north into the Riverlands with the Hot Pie and Lamy Greenhands. First appearance of Lamy Greenhands here. We also see Tyrion basically being made to Hand the King, which basically segues into his greatest role, right, in as Hand the King in season 2. I think season 2 was where Tyrion was at his best here. Basically, just ignore the notes I have down there in the left-hand side about the White Walkers and stuff like that. I forgot to put in my notes on this episode, unfortunately. We see the way that, the rest of the Starks up in Winterfell, Bran and Rickon basically react to Ned Stark's death, right? They actually felt it and dreamed about it as well. So, you can really tell that the Stark family has these kind of innate powers that nobody else seems to have. And lastly, okay, we have Daenerys Targaryen basically basically walking into a hut of burning fire, right? And basically walking out, naked with her flame retardant wig and with 3 little baby dragons on her. And it's like, whoa, man, that is cool. The birth of the dragons. She is now the mother of dragons here. and also, really emotional series. That whole scene of Rob swinging that sword was just so gut wrenching. It was great, and also what was so uplifting was kind of like the bookend to the northern storyline this episode, where Rob becomes crowned the king of the North, and how he just appears and looks so reluctant to be that. Right? He looks at his mom, and goes, "Really, should I be doing this? Can I do this?" And no, he turns out to be a pretty damn good military commander. He's not very great, in terms of political strategy, obviously, but in terms of military commander, he ends up being a really, really good king. And this speech, this whole King of the North scene was just so much more powerful than the Jon Snow crowning of him being the King of the North in terms of the acting, in terms of the portrayal, in terms of what a crowning actually looks like. And I don't know. I love this. I love this episode. I thought this was great. It was so emotional. The actors and actresses were so great in this episode. And I don't know. I just really thought this was a very well done episode. I loved it.
It is. It's a great episode, Mel. And this is what do you it's especially with your season 1 on your final episode. Mm-hmm. You're going to be taking a break for a good year, right? I mean, how are you going to get the folks to come back to the next season, right? And how you do that is with a fantastic ending episode here. So we had some hope with Danny's Dragons, and again, I think my favorite scene is with Rob's crowning, if you will, too, in this scene, in this episode too. This was our George W. Bush episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. The whole Ned Stark's head as George W. Bush, right, or something like that.
Yeah. And that's a very, very powerful episode. So with the King in the North.
Yeah, and also, guys, the music, the score of this episode was completely off the charts. I mean, this episode probably had the best score of any of the 67 episodes that we watched in Game of Thrones in terms of the background music. It was great. I mean, especially that King of the North music at the end was just so perfect and so on time and on the spot. So money.
This is the one also where Joffrey has the minstrel. Is that scene?
No. Isn't. It's going to be in the next season if that happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're close to it.
Yeah,
okay.
We're close to it. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely great pick.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. And okay, guys, so we are done for our list. So what we're going to do now is just do a quick recap in case anybody missed the episodes that we went through before. And we're going to start with Dawg's recap. Go for it, Dawg.
Okay. Yep. So folks, my number 1 was Hard Home, season 5, episode 8. And my number 2 was season 2, episode 9, Blackwater. Number 3, I had season 4, episode 9, Watchers on the Wall. And for my number 4 pick there, I had season 3, episode 4. That one, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was called. Oh yeah, it was Watches Ended, right?
Yep.
Yeah, not Watches Ended. Excuse me. And number 5 there, I had Golden Crown. That's season 1, episode 6. And my honorable mention there, folks, was 2 Swords. Sorry.
Yeah, great list, Dawg. And for my list, the honorable mention goes to The Mountain and the Viper and that awesome scream by Ilaria Sand. Number 5 is Blackwater. Number 4 is The Rains of Castamere. Good old Water Frey. Number 3 is Winter is Coming. Number 2 is Hard Home. And number 1, Fire and Blood. There's just the only king, a bend my knee to. By the words of the immortal great John Umber here. So that is it, guys. Thanks a lot for coming out here. If you want to catch the rest of the show, please catch it on replay. We went through a lot of stuff in this stream here. We have to even show statistics, which is pretty cool. And hope you guys enjoyed it. Any last words, Dawg, about this stream?
I'm wondering, were there any other episodes that were like close to your list, Mel? I was thinking, season 6, episode 10, and season 6, episode 9 were both pretty close to making my list too. The Battle of the Bastards and Winds of Winter episodes.
Yeah. The Winds of Winter was really close on my list. I mean, couldn't quite crack it, if you will. I'm trying to think of some other ones. That was only really the one that couldn't quite make the list here. I mean, I think in my opinion, okay, is a contrary opinion, but I think the Battle Bastards was kind of poorly done. You know, it was kind of overrated, but that's just me. You know, in terms of just kind of like some of the impossible scenarios that went on in that episode. It didn't quite make sense, but you know, there were some other ones I think in like the Bear and the Maiden Fair in season 3. I thought was pretty cool. You know, yeah. I mean, come on, I mean, it's like Brienne and Jamie fighting a bear. I mean, that's pretty cool. So, anything else, Dawg? You're muted.
I'm muted.
Oh, okay, no, not anymore. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was thinking The Climb also. That was a pretty good one when they climbed the wall.
Oh yeah, that was good. Kiss by Fire was actually pretty good. You know, I thought too. You know, when Jon and Ygritte, consummate their love. I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm trying to think of anything happened last season last season was kind of a mess in so many ways.
I like the last episode. Yeah. There's so much character interaction, in that last episode. And, some of the, even the prior episode when they go beyond the wall with, some of the character interaction. But, yeah, it's kind of a little all over the place a little bit, teleporting and.
Yeah, exactly. And, the whole thing of how Littlefinger dies, without a trowel or anything. I thought it was kind of like, okay, so this is Northern Justice, right? No, I mean, really, the only one that couldn't break it. I mean, and that's why it was kind of easy for me was probably the Winds of Winter was probably, the toughest choice.
Right. Yeah. I love the beginning of that with with the music and the piano and stuff, and just some memorable scenes in there, of course, too. So great episode.
Yeah, great, and so perfect. So Dawg, so what's going on with your channel and what are you going to be doing before we sign off here?
Oh, so yeah, folks, I do entertainment news, gaming, and live chat. So yeah, we've been tackling a lot of Oscar news and things of that, lately, things of that nature. Lately we have been. So coming up this week, probably do some entertainment news, things of that nature. We'll go over our box office, weekend box office report, and maybe take a look at some upcoming films. We'll also be this Saturday, folks, because normally we're on Sundays, but Super Bowl Sundays this Sunday, of course, right? So we're going to be on Saturday this week on the Dawg Show at 6:30 p.m. or was it? Yeah, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 Central, and that'll be on Saturday. And I think we're going to do our top like our face-off battles, our fantasy face-off battles, right? Like, who would you want to see faced off against who? Like our top 7 fighters pitted against each other sort of thing, right, Mel?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'd be like our fantasy Game of Thrones trial by combats. So it's in line with Super Bowl, right? And I think we'll also give our predictions for the Super Bowl. So please use us if you're going to be placing any kind of bets before the Super Bowl, because we know a lot more than the Las Vegas gamblers and everybody else does.
Definitely.
All right.
Gregor versus Leanna Mormont.
Yeah, Leanna Mormont against the Bear in the pit at Harrenhal. I don't know. So anyway, well, you guys know where to find me, right? You're on this channel, obviously, but you can find me here every week with Dawg doing these top 5 streams, and also I'm starting up a weekly series called A Clash of Crows, where basically I bring up a game that I kind of like programmed in to basically discuss and debate certain fantasy or random matchups between characters of Game of Thrones. And I will be pushing out a Westworld video stream that I did a while back with Justin Thomas out on my channel as a premiere about the location of Westworld, and that will be probably this week or next week on that. But it'll be like in a premiere format, so look out for that. And you can find me this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be hosting our Jeopardy streams at the Citadel Trivia with Felicia. So check it out. Our theme for that Jeopardy stream is ordered randomness. So it's like chaos theory. So that's what it is. The theme is chaos theory or ordered randomness. So anyway, please go ahead, check it out, and that's all we have to say. Last words, Dawg, before we sign off.
I just want to say thanks to all the folks coming out. Living My Rhapsody, Bridge, Luke from Drinks and Those Things, Owen Fleming, Marie, Game of Theories with Marie, Carrie McDonald, Bubba Husky, Peter Griffin was here too. OTDA, Chrissy of Old Stones, saw her earlier. Thinking of folks, Sword in the Darkness from Solo Trivia as well. Felicia was here too. And anybody else I miss here, Milt?
We got Owen Fleming was there.
Yeah. Lady Elena Tyrell.
Yeah, Lady Elena Tyrell, and that's about as far as I can scroll up here. So in case if we missed you, you basically came too early and left too early for us to scroll up and actually catch your name. So it's not, we're not doing this intentionally by not mentioning your name. It's just that we can't see any further up than like maybe 100 or 200 lines of chat text, I think. So besides that, I think we are about ready to go. So thanks a lot again for everybody for coming out here. And next time we'll be on the Dawg channel with our another top 5 list. See you guys later. Be safe.